Welcome to the Heat of Command podcast, Mastering the Art of Fire Service Leadership,
where we, your hosts, aim to teach you how to use introspection and self-reflection to be your most authentic, genuine self, leader, and human being.
And now, here are your hosts. This is Kyle Matusik.
And Kerry Henderson. Thanks for joining.
Hey, y'all. We've been off for a few weeks, so welcome back. We have missed you guys, and we're happy that you're tuning in with us again. I was on spring break, and we've both been working on some house projects and stuff going on. So life, as everyone knows it, got busy. And today we are back recording. And I will be honest, today is one of those days where it's like, what? How do I get back into this, right? I've been on vacation. I'm exhausted. I need a vacation from my vacation, and I'm tired. And so I thought, what better topic for us to get into than how to lead when you just aren't feeling it, and how to do that authentically, and how to do that real without letting people down, and to show people what that looks like, because we can't always all be 100% all the time. That's not real, right? So today we're going to talk about leading and showing up when you're not 100%. Be that mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it is you have going on, because we all have lives. We all get tired. We all get sick. We all have family crap. We all have life crap. So how do you work through that? Because I can think back on many times in my professional career as a young firefighter, as a captain, as a battalion chief, where there have been times where either low motivation, I don't feel good, I've got crap in my personal life going on, and what I did right and what I did wrong during those times. So let's get into it. So Kyle, how you been?
Yeah, good. Excited to be back and keep the conversation going as always. Having the tough conversations and hopefully sparking some thoughts out there and just get you thinking again. We don't have all the answers. We just try to share our lived experience with you and give us some of our thoughts and ideas. Not saying they're right or wrong, but just, like I said, keeping the conversation going. I think when we look at, leading when you don't feel like it, this one's gonna hit close to home for me. So I think we have to start with the environment that you're in, does it allow you the grace or the room to have those off days, and are there things in place for other people to fill in or push you up or whatever? So I think on like a global scale, you look at your environment first, and let's just say that the environment isn't that, and you have to look deep within to continue to lead when you just don't feel like that. And, I think there's a lot of challenges there. And I think when we look at leadership, it can look very different than what we imagine an effective leader being within the firehouse, right? Especially during those times where you don't feel like it or you don't feel like showing up. Or if it's an extended period of time where you're just like not engaged at all, leading might just look different than what we typically would consider leadership looking like. And I think that's okay. So I think there's a broad topic. We'll probably zero in on some spots in terms of, when you don't feel like it. In my career, there's been plenty of times, maybe currently, maybe not currently, I'll leave that one out, where you don't feel like leading. But for me, it's almost like leadership looks different. I think a lot of times in our industry, in our culture, we were talking about culture before we got on this call. I think it's almost that you have to live, breathe, eat everything fire service 100% of the time. And a lot of times, well, if you're not doing that, people don't like you, right? Or you're not part of the in group or whatever the case is. And I think when we walk into the door sometimes at work, like it is supposed to be on all the time, 100%. You got to go, and give everything you have to work. And like you said, and you opened up with, a lot of times that is just simply not the case. So I think, it's those expectations from what this job entails, what it is, understanding people, right? Empathy, compassion. Every time we talk, everything's always so full circle. Encompassing all that to understand, like, it's going to look different on a daily basis. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the environment part of this because that's such a big part of, like, when stuff is going on for you, what culture you live in, right? What culture you're showing up in, and because if you are in a not supportive culture and you're having a day, you're having a month, you're having a season, and you've got to show up anyways, that could really lead to you faking it.
Mhm.
And if we all fake it some, right? But, like, if you're truly faking it, people know that, and that's not gonna work out for you, or the opposite happens and you just check out, right? So, there's this sweet spot of it's okay to need some space and some time and to be able to show up with humility and say, "Look, this is what's going on with me," without dumping on people, without, you know, it y there's always also a sweet spot of vulnerability of how much you share as a leader and how much you kind of keep to yourself, but, that you have a culture where you can come in and say, this is what I'm going through. I just need you guys to give me a little bit of grace. I'm here. I'm still dialed in my decision making ability. I'm going to delegate some of this stuff. Maybe I'm going to rest a little bit more than normal, a little bit more self care, whatever it is. But if you don't have the culture that supports that, or people that work for you that support that, or people that you work for that support that, you're going to fake it and not make it, or you're going to check out.
Mhm.
And that, I guess today really we should talk about preventing those two things from happening and how to get into that sweet spot.
Yeah, I think when you talk about faking it and not making it, I think that's such a huge topic to discuss because you're only going to fake it for so long, and then whatever's going on in your life is going to get the best of you at some point, right? And it's going to look different, but it is. And then you're going to let a job just control you, and that's not good for anybody. And then checking out, right? Burning out, checking out, whatever. Like, some of this is self protection, or you've been in an environment for so long that it's just like not worth your time anymore, or energy, or emotional drainage. So it's easy to check out. Eventually, just check out and be like, look, I'm here to do a job. I'm going to do my job, and that's about it. And if that is happening in your organization and you see that, like, there needs to be some huge looks as to why that happens, even if it's one person, two people, three, whatever. Why is that going on? I think right now we're seeing a lot of young people come into our industry. So they don't understand. So you might have a lot of older or very few older people in your organizations, and some of them might be checked out. And the young people have no idea. They think this is all normal, right? What the culture is. A lot of them don't have, prior lived experience or worked experience. So this is all they know, which then just continues this cycle. And this is a time we can pull ourselves out of the cycle. But yeah, the faking it is detrimental to your health, physical
Yeah.
health, mental health, actual health. It's detrimental to it. Checking out, I think there's two sides to this. I think maybe sometimes temporarily it's okay to check out. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if that is your quick go-to, there might be an opportunity to re-examine why you're so quick to check out. But then at the same token, like, for listeners out there who have been part of organizations that have just been rough to be a part, I, checking out might. Again, that's where I say leadership looks different, right? Are you leading outside of the firehouse? Are you doing things? Are you a leader within your household, which is most important if you ask me? Like, if you're succeeding there, you're still succeeding, and that's okay. So I want to caution, just because, maybe you're not leading within the constructs of the firehouse, what else is going on in your life? And is that just a point in your career where you're just like, I've had enough there. Like, I can't do it. I'm not going to have the influence. I'm not going to do this. It's a culture thing. It is what it is. I'm okay with it. I've accepted it, but I'm going to lead here and these other places. And people will see that, right? But that doesn't take away from running incidents or making decisions or doing those types of things. I think more or less what we're talking about in terms of leadership is leading within those four walls of the firehouse.
Yeah, I can think of 1,000 things here. Uh, where this episode could take us, but a couple of the things that come to mind is first is, there's so many great leaders out there, and we see so many people that are great when they're great, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to also show people how to be good when you're not feeling great. I think that's such a important leadership example and training, and just to show others how to show up when you're not feeling it, right? And so if your choice is to fake it, like, you're showing people that's what they have to do, that they can't show up imperfect, right? And so I think it's a really good leadership lesson when if you're the type of person that's a good leader just because you're in charge, this isn't going to work for you. This is where things are going to go awry. But if you're the type of leader that can still show up when things are wonky and show people how to walk through that part, I think it's good leadership all the way around. So a couple other things that come to mind for me is, so if you're tired, you're unmotivated, like, what do you do about that? So how do you show up and still be effective, make good decisions, and be a good leader for your team? It's admitting that you might be in that spot. Maybe you don't need to. Maybe you don't need to say anything, but it's, what have you put in place to make sure you're successful even in those moments? So what has your training been like? What are your routines like? Do you have checklists? Do you have senior men and women that you can delegate during those times? Like, you really need a lot of support. And so if you're the type of person that runs a a shift that's, you're always the only one in charge and people have to come to you for everything, this is when that fails. So you have to really build up your senior guys and girls, men and women, because then when this stuff happens, there's that buffer already. You've already got that buffer. You people can all you have someone that already is kind of stepping up into that informal leadership role, and you can go to them and say, "Hey, look, I may need to lean on you a little bit more than normal today or this week," or whatever it is, or you maybe don't say anything at all, but that you've already got that system in place. But if you're the one that you have so much micromanagement going on, this is when that crumbles, that system falls apart. And so make sure you have a good system in place, a good Rolodex built up of how you handle things, how you're going to make decisions, checklists, or whatever it is, however you handle things, so that you're still safe, you're still effective, even when you're feeling whatever, you're feeling a little off. The other thing I wanted to bring up is management and leadership, handling when your officers or your leaders are like, and I'm trying to think how to explain this. I've seen this happen where you've got this like go getter officer, any whatever rank it is, and they're every committee, they're killing it, they're doing all the things, all the special projects, they're showing up to all the extra trainings, and then all of a sudden, maybe they're not, but they're still killing it in the four walls of their firehouse, right? They're still great captains or lieutenants or whatever, taking care of their people, making great decisions on fire grounds, but for whatever reason, maybe they're not doing all these committees. And what I have seen from a leadership perspective at my rank is people go, "Well, why are they checked out? Like, why aren't they, oh, they're not as engaged anymore, or they're not this." But maybe ask them why. Maybe they have family stuff going on and they are refocusing and they're a better leader now at home, right? Or whatever it is. But I hate that we define good leadership sometimes by how involved you are. And I think it is very important for you to be involved. Don't get me wrong. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I think it's very important for you to be involved in your department. But there are times in your life where you have to reevaluate your priorities. And sometimes you can't be that person, right? Maybe you've got young kids, or you're more involved in your church now, or you're playing softball, or maybe you just need a break and you got burned out. That doesn't make you less of a leader. Sometimes it makes you a better leader because you've decided that for yourself. And You're still killing it with your guys and girls at the firehouse. You're just doing less globally. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, there's a lot there. And I think that's great, great points. In terms of, I think you hit it right. How much you do is, a lot of people think that's what makes you a leader, and that's so far from the truth. Like, you could do 100 things, you could say all the right things to the right people, but that does not make you a leader. In my biggest opinion, and I've shared this, if you're not leading in your home, you ain't leading at the firehouse. So if, start there. Everything we talk about, you can practice at your house, practice on your kids, on your spouse, everything, right? And succeed there, because they're going to tell you right to your face. A lot of times, in our industry, things won't get said to your face. But yeah, I there is a lot of that. And I think there, in our industry, you see that gung ho, like, we get in, we get the job, you want to get involved, and then a point hits in life, and you're like, what did I get myself into, right? And you're going to this training, and now you got to go to the here and there, and sometimes it's just too much. And, that's okay. But again, that goes back to that environment. Like, what type of environment do you have within your organization? Do you allow for that to happen? And if you do, you need to prepare for people to get burned out and not badmouth them when they do, because, we typically see that. I've been called a quitter numerous times, and it's like, nobody asked me why I stopped doing things. They just, half my organization calls me a quitter, and it's like, it's crazy. So the environment can establish, like, how involved we can get people, and we need to understand the stresses of our profession and our job, and account for all that. So if you have that person that wants to be involved in every committee, every specialty team, union board, all these things, you need to, like, reel that in real quick, and reel that in the early parts of the career, so that just doesn't happen. You could prevent all this from happening, but we let it go, and we think that's a good employee, and then we burn them out and they're done, right? And they're 10 years in, they got 20 more to retirement, and then their next 20 years, they're done. And we burned them out in 10 years, and that's that, So it's an opportunity to grow as an organization and realize. Now, with that said, things that we experience up here and not so much there, especially being a big union state, staffing within a lot of organization is very minimal. We lost staffing a few years ago, and more gets thrown on your shoulders, and we get involved in more teams and more, and we're running more calls, right? Since COVID, like, we are running from what I know, most people are running substantially more calls with the same staffing. And it's like, there's nothing in place to prevent or reduce burnout or people doing too much. It's just go, more, because that's what we have to do. It's how we look. It's our image. It's what we do. And it's like, hold on a second. Whoa. So yeah, I think there's, again, lots to talk about within just that issue alone, but there is a lot of opportunity to grow as an organization if we start realizing some of these things, and we prevent the cases where we have great leaders from getting burnt out and being done or being off. We just have those preventions in place, understanding that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think in most everybody's career in this industry, you are going to reach that point at some point, whether it's doing too much, or you have a string of rough calls, or a month where you're up every night, or you get married, or you have struggle in your marriage, whatever. At some point, it's going to happen to you. And what is that environment like, in your home to pick you up, right? How are you getting filled up? And a lot of times our careers, our firehouses are not where you're getting filled up. You're getting beat down more, so it's really hard. We can build a certain level of resilience over time. And I think a lot of people in our careers have, and that's awesome. But sometimes that only goes so far, and we can only take so much, So yeah, this is, there's definitely, like I said, opportunity to build organizations a completely different way. And, when we examine what we're doing in our industry today and the requirements and the burdens placed on us as individuals and as specialty teams, it's how can we best triage this and how can we share the wealth across? And if we can't do something, do the administrators of the organization have the ability or the courage to stand up and be like, we can't do that? Right? Or give me more staffing or do this. This is what we need. Not saying, and I'm not talking about like anything responding to emergencies, but I'm saying, committees and all the
Yeah.
other ancillary stuff that we have, right? I'm never talking about the actual job we signed up for, right? Running emergencies and doing that. Like, we're not talking about that. We're always going to show up for that. But all these other things of involvement, sometimes we just might need to pull the reins back a little bit.
Yeah, we had those tough conversations around the COVID time. e- when we went through a staffing crisis, just like everyone else, we're in a much, much, much better place now. But when we were in the thick of that, we had folks that needed to take AEMT. We had a bunch of folks going to paramedic. We require certain ALS merit badge classes. So, a trauma class, a PEDS class, an ACLS class, annual CPR, tech team training, dive team training, all the things. And all the other stuff we were trying to accomplish in the department and special projects and all this stuff. And so we had to take a look at, okay, if we're going to hold people mandatory and we're also going to require them to maintain these extra certifications, so they have to come off duty for that. And then they've got to come for dive team training and tech team training, and they've got to and they're going to paramedic on their own. Like, we cannot expect people to just that was too much. So we really, really had to look at that and say, what are we not going to make people do anymore?
Mhm.
What is the breaking point of, we understand that we're running 10% more calls every year. Now we have increased staffing, and which is great. And now we're fully staffed, but if we're going to hold you mandatory and it's like every day of your week
Yep.
that you're doing something at work. And we were cutting stuff. We were pulling stuff back. We were not allowing people to form work groups and committees for special projects just until it kind of settled, because there were so many of us in the fire service that feel not just obligated, but like want to be a part of all those things. And if, like you said, you don't prevent that burnout, people will just, I'm that type of person where it's like, oh, I have a really hard time saying no. I'm like, "Oh, yes, I want to, because I want to make the difference, right? I wanna be a part of it because I wanna have a say and I wanna help do the right thing." And so I'll sign up for all the things, and then the next thing I know, I'm like, I have to go to, like, the 47th meeting this week because I've signed up for all this stuff." So, we y your organizations have to look at that. And the other thing too that I wanted to bring up, I jotted down so I wouldn't forget it, is when there are times where you're showing up tired, or you're showing up not 100% like motivated, or you're whatever, you're blah, like I like to say. y- If you're always doing the bare minimum, there's no there's no space, right? So you need to be darn good at your job most of the time, right?
Mhm.
So if you're the bare minimum kind of person, this little segment's for you. Like, it's much harder for you to get that grace and say, "Hey, today is not my day. I need some leniency." You need to be kinda killing it most of the other days, right?
Mm.
And I feel like most of our audience that listens to this lives in that space. They live in the, "I'm killing it most days. Today I need a break." But if there's 1% of listeners that are like, "Yeah, I'm kinda just barely skating by at this point," here's my message to you, like, it's gonna be much harder for you. It's gonna be much harder for you. So,
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the words to that. I think everybody at some point needs some level of grace, regardless if they do the bare minimum or not. Like, But I completely understand what you're saying. Like, you're that go-getter, you're motivated constantly, and you have an off day. Yeah, get picked up. But for me, I think a lot of the times the challenge comes is, and maybe we dive a little bit deeper into, you like, how do you? And maybe you could answer this for me. Maybe it's literally me asking this question. Like, you for the because I don't think I'm the only one, but you are a part of an organization that, your values don't align. You've had some challenges through your career, and it is easy to continue to do your job, right? And do it well and make decisions and be the decision maker. But you just kind of don't get involved in the culture and you sit in the background and I maybe do a little, maybe not the bare minimum, but close to it. you know,
And I'm not talking about I think maybe I didn't explain it well. I'm talking about you're the officer that sits in his office every day, you do no training, you're not developing your people at all, you're not providing any guidance, any mentoring, you don't know any of your policies.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's
Okay.
what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
I hear you. I hear you.
I'm
Yeah.
not talking about you're frustrated with your organization, and so you're not, like, signing up for every committee, you're not, you know, living and breathing the fire service. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't love the culture of the organization they work for, and they're frustrated, but they're still training with their guys. They're still developing their people. They're still doing the right thing, making good decisions, busting their butt on fire scenes, tactically sound. That's what I'm talking
I
about.
got you. I got you. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Yeah, we're on the same page there. So I guess my question, and discussion point would be for like you find yourselves in these troubling organizations or cultures because let's face it, I've had every time we go and speak, I've had people come up to us and have this very discussion. Like, how do I do it? Like, I don't know. And they're like begging for an answer. And I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, yeah, how do you do it? And, sometimes, like I said, we have to look at leadership different ways. And again, I'm not talking about the fireground, just kind of at the firehouse and how you're leading there. And what does that look like? I guess my question would be if you're leading these young guys, we have a lot of young guys coming into our industry and you're teaching them how not to have this job be their whole identity. Is that leadership?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think therein lies a challenge, though,
Mhm.
because if you do that in the wrong culture, you're pegged as not a leader, right? But so I think when we look at leadership, as a lot of times, if not most of the time, it is going against the norm. And I think that's where exceptional leaders stand out, that they don't have a problem voicing an opinion or stating what's wrong, willing to put the effort in to fix it, but nobody agrees with them. Therein lies the challenge. And I think that happens a lot. And I think there's a lot of young leaders out there that would love to see things operate differently, but they're stuck and they don't know what to do. And so it's either, I don't even think it's faking it a lot of times now, especially the conversations that we've had at some of the conferences we had. It is almost just pulling back. Like, I have no control. There's nothing I can do. I can guide these young people to, look at this industry and profession differently than what they initially come in thinking and explain to them what this job could do to them if they're not taking care of themselves. Let them reprioritize what's important to them, family, health, things of that nature, and help them establish some values early on, but I think uncommonly that is not looked at as leadership within our culture. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little crazy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and what it really makes me think of is that's your why, right? So when
Yeah.
you're in this funk, this whatever, it's whatever your why is what you have to lean on.
Hmm.
So, when I got into the fire service, my why was I just loved to be in the middle of the chaos and fix it, right? I liked to be a fixer. And so it was the citizens and the citizens were my why. And they're still my why, but I have a different role now.
Hmm.
So my why is the people that I'm responsible for taking care of. So now, like when I'm in a funk, it's who's relying on me today and what do they need from me? And it may just be one small thing that I could do, but it's like, what is the one thing I could do today to make a difference that is based on my why? And so your why is always changing. So your why is very, very, very different now.
Oh
It's,
yeah.
showing these young folks a different side of the fire service. And that's different for you than it is for me. And it's different for maybe a young company officer who's, it's your why is going to be, everyone's why is going to be different. But to me, just to kind of wrap this episode up, because obviously you can hear my cattle dog is losing her mind in the background because we have people working at our house. But is really like when you're in that place of, I'm in a funk, I'm in this whatever, something's going on. What's my why? Lean on that. And what is one thing I can do today to be better, to affect change, to make a difference? Just one thing, right? And then I think for me, one thing always leads to another, and I usually then can pull myself out of it. But yeah, what's your why?
Yeah, I like that. I think it's good way to end right there.
All right.
Figure out your why.
Yes. My why right now is to get my dog to stop barking.
There you go.
But we appreciate you guys always letting us just ramble and get it all off our chest, because that's what this is all about. And keep listening and keep sending us ideas. And we just thank you so much for the support and just sticking with us.
As we wrap up another episode, this has been Kyle
And Kerry.
from the Heat of Command podcast.
Thank you, as always, for listening. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And as always, we love the feedback. Keep it coming.
See you next time.